Hello and welcome to another episode of The Nation Jendela. I'm Elaine Nur Abdullah. Now, the Jalinan Digital Negara or Jendela plan was formulated to provide wider coverage and better quality of broadband experience for the Rakyat whilst preparing the country for 5G technology. And many initiatives have been set up to bring you improved connectivity and communication. So at this point, the National Digital Infrastructure Plan has achieved its targets set under the second quarter of Phase 1 and is on track to achieve the subsequent objectives. Joining me for today's conversation is Tengku Muneer, Tengku Muzani, Chief Strategy Officer, Telekom Malaysia. The topic in discussion for today is commitment to enable a digital Malaysia. Hello and welcome, Tengku Muneer. How are you doing today?
Elaine. Hello, Elaine. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you for joining us here. Now, we've had several weeks of speaking about Jendela and the acceleration plan that Malaysia has towards making us a more digital nation. And today we're talking about the commitment, sort of reinforcing that commitment towards this same goal. Now, to start the ball rolling, perhaps you can enlighten us on TM's involvement in Plan Tindakan Jalinan Digital Negara Jendela.
Yes, Elaine. TM has, from the beginning, even during the initial phase of our high-speed broadband rollout, has always been the core operator, so to speak, in laying out the foundation of the national connectivity agenda. And the interesting thing about Jendela is that it is not just a TM thing. It is also a combination of all the operators, the major operators, to come in and roll out the infrastructure to address the country's connectivity needs. And in terms of where TM comes into play, there are two layers that we are looking at. One layer is addressing the immediate needs for the public, the Rakyat, so to speak. And as you can see, the plans in Jendela is to roll out up to 9 million premises with 7.5 million by 2022 by fibre. Yep. We are one of the players. We are not the only player. Yep. You have the other operators as well. I think in terms of what the government is doing right now is accelerating the connectivity, or shall I say, minimizing the digital divide, so to speak. Yep. Right? I mean, it's strategy speak, so to speak. But I think at the end of the day, before we actually move into the next level of addressing connectivity, we need to make sure that everybody within the outskirt areas, which includes the 1.5 million out of the 9 million not covered by fibre, to be connected first. Now, in this current pandemic, I think we all realize that the need for connectivity has been accelerated. Yep. Basic connectivity to the homes, connectivity to offices, even connectivity to enterprise, right? Suddenly we realize, hey, I think we need to do this fast. Yep. And I think it's quite timely that with Jendela, we are pragmatically addressing this particular issues that we have today.
Now, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic really showed us all the sort of gaps, the flaws, the sort of areas that require more improvement, the priorities that we need to put. Because for the longest time, a lot of people sort of place this as a back burner, sort of like, okay, we will have time to do this. We can spend little by little, but there's suddenly a sort of huge focus on the requirement to come up to a certain status or to a certain level where it's acceptable for all to stay sort of. It's not just it's more than a survival mode. It's to live. It sort of becomes a lifeline at this point of time. Hence, one of the agendas towards Jendela was making telcos a third utility in its process, in order because we understand how this has become paramount and important in our livelihoods. So as Malaysia moves towards this digital nation or this idea of this future that we want to have, what are these initiatives implemented by TM to reduce that digital gap that you just highlighted?
Okay, you highlighted a valid point there, Elaine. I think prior to this, when you talk about connectivity, it's about just getting connected, right? And as I mentioned earlier, with COVID-19 and so forth, what it does is that connectivity allows livelihood, enables livelihood of people, right? People out of the job. The digital economy has started to to be accelerated, right?
Yeah.
But in order for us to be fair to everybody, this needs to reach out even to the outskirt areas,
exactly.
right?
And that's the biggest challenge. I mean, it's easy to sort of like function within that sort of city-centric sphere where there's high density, there's a lot of people, and you can sort of feed a large amount of people with a smaller network or location. But when geography comes into the play and it becomes a challenge, how do we reconcile that sort of difference?
I think that's what Jendela was trying to do, right? Or shall I say, is doing right now. And all operators have managed to exceed expectations in terms of the rollouts. But I think rather than look at the connectivity, I think we have to look at the second layer, which is what do people really want out of this connectivity now?
Right. Okay.
I think that's the most important thing. And I think you've heard that this proliferation of the digital economy, right? What do you mean by digital economy? That means businesses getting connected without having a physical premises. Yeah, exactly. Right? So and as you can see, this enables that. So the original thinking of just having connectivity has been accelerated to generating a digital economy. So I think this is what we meant by digital Malaysia. I think it's when we looked at it, I think you did ask me prior to this session, how do we really look into the future? Yeah.
Let's come back to that in a short while. We'll take a short breather. Sure. I want to dive into the future. We're talking about, what are our optics in order for us to be able to prepare us for that potential future. We'll be right back with that. Stay tuned. We'll take a short breather. We'll be back.
Osman is a fisherman while his wife sells crackers online. As their area is quite remote, their internet is slow. This makes it difficult for Osman to market his products online, and he's unable to meet the demands of his customers. Introducing Jendela, a government initiative to improve Malaysia's communications infrastructure and broadband coverage. This move will reduce the digital divide and enable cities, suburbs and rural areas to receive better quality broadband services. Jendela will be rolled out in phases. The 3G network will be gradually terminated as the 4G network is expanded to give Malaysians access to high-speed mobile lines throughout the country. Additionally, all fibre service providers will continue to lend their support by upgrading their network capacity and deploying more base stations to meet the increase in 4G and 5G traffic. This will pave the way for future technology adoptions such as wireless and fixed wireless access, VoLTE, and 5G to achieve the country's digital agenda. Thanks to the high internet speed that his area now enjoys, Osman can easily find out the current prices of fish. His wife's online sales revenue has also increased. This digital transformation will raise the people's economic status and advance the country's socio-economic progress.
Hi, thanks for staying with us on The Nation Jendela. You're still with me, Elaine Abla, and in the studio I'm speaking to Tengku Muneer, Tengku Muzani, Chief Strategy Officer for Telekom Malaysia. And we're speaking about the topic of commitment to enable a digital Malaysia. Now, Tengku Muneer, we previously spoke about sort of where TM lies with regards to the whole plan of Jendela. And before we went on a break, we talked about the future, having optics on what's next. So let's go there.
Sure. Okay, thanks, Elaine. Let me start with the recently announced My Digital Blueprint.
Right.
What it addressed was not just the connectivity needs, but it also addresses the enterprise needs. I think in terms of where TM is coming from, yes, we are addressing the customer needs today with basic connectivity, but I think in order for the country to move into the digital age, so to speak, is to address the needs of the enterprise itself.
Right.
Now, and I think in the last announcement, we are also one of the 4 CSPs. The CSPs is the cloud service providers. Now, cloud service is the enabler to a lot more greater things, right? And let's tie that as well with the also recently announced Digital National Berhad, which allows 5G to happen. Now, when we as in TM, we look at 5G not just as a basic connectivity on your cellular phone. It enables machine-to-machine operations. That means almost full automation to that of the enterprise.
Right.
The enterprise market is something which is, I wouldn't say is underserved, but it's not really been addressed properly in that sense, because advancements typically will benefit them more than that of the average user. Where being a CSP, you are moving towards this digital space, but digital space also comes with its own set of perils. Which is cybersecurity.
Yes, correct.
Which is why we have our CyDex.
Which is a huge issue.
Is a huge issue,
yes.
Right? So when we started to build this puzzle, we looked at the end-to-end implication of providing this service to the enterprise space. Now, the most important for us is, yes, this is the enabler, but what comes after that? So I think if we were to look at the forward-looking use cases that we have around the world, you know, things like automated cars, automated traffic light systems, you know, these sort of things. This is just the tip of the iceberg of what the future will hold when we get this connectivity conundrum in the country addressed.
So where are we on the connectivity conundrum at this point?
We are, as a matter of fact, all the operators, I mentioned earlier, all the operators are ahead. There's a lot of good news coming. We are rolling out on track towards fulfilling the objective of Jendela. But when we look at the current, for example, fiber, we look at fiber, we are addressing 7.5 million out of 9 million premises. Now, there's a remaining 1.5 which can be addressed through different technologies.
Right, because it's always very nice to hear that, you know, there are results, you know, we're on track, but usually it's the last leg, the last mile that becomes the biggest challenge, and where, you know, I don't know whether the staminas will wane, but, you know, they become a sort of roadblock. So how are we preparing for those challenges that will soon hit?
I think this is the good thing about Jendela. When we look at the cohesiveness on how we are working towards reaching this objective, it is not like a TM thing or another operator thing. It's the government coming together, and I think you also mentioned earlier that it becomes a utility, right? So connectivity becomes a utility. Then it allows us less roadblocks in rolling out the infrastructure.
Right.
I think this is the challenge of all the operators, including us. Is connecting from one point to another. It's not as simple as digging a hole, but you also need to have your right of way. There are a lot of legal implication, legislation, state government, but everybody's coming together in addressing this. And I think as the magic around Jendela is that now even the owners of the towers and the sites or whatever, they want to do it as well, because they will be addressing the Rakyat's needs, right? Including enterprises, within their interest to do that.
And this reminds me of the cohesion that this social enterprise or this social sort of I find that, you know, everybody's coming together. It creates sort of like a social agenda that we're all reaching together. So the better that we work with each other, the better that we work together, the faster we get there, and the less resources that are wasted in that sense. So moving on, I just wanted to quickly touch about what are the required technologies as we work towards reducing that digital gap.
Okay, highlighting the 7.5 million. We will be fiberizing that. So basically, I think that's done. Then there is this 1.5 million that needs to be addressed. There are a multitude of technologies. There's satellite, there's 4G, there's even 5G that's going to come in later. So I think it depends on the viability of rolling out in a certain area.
So it will be on case by case.
It's going to be case by case, fit for purpose. I think the term that we should be looking at is fit for purpose technologies to address a particular gap.
Okay, so the fit-for-purpose technologies would hopefully be able to address anyone who like you said earlier, could be underserved at this point of time. Now, TM, what's its role in accelerating the establishment of this digital nation?
Okay, so coming back to the cloud service and what comes after that, I think the biggest driver in the country, without us really looking into the grand scheme of things, is the enterprise. The enterprise generates the momentum in the economy. I think this is where TM is going to be focusing on. I think we have talked about it for quite some time that we are addressing the enterprise space. But what do you mean by that, right? This, you see, enterprise space 3-4 years ago is predominantly corporates, the government, and so forth. But I think as we move into this post-COVID, this new normal, SMEs are going to be one of the major players. And I think even in the topic of what are we going to provide to the customers, this is something that the SMEs themselves can actually come up with, right? But what do they need? They need the cloud services, they need the security, they need the basic connectivity. These are the three things that we are already providing today. But I think what we want to actually leap forward in is the solutions.
Right.
How do you address a customer needs? I mean, previously we talk about connectivity. Okay, you've got connectivity. I think I highlighted
How do
earlier.
you use it?
How do you use it, right? You can't be watching YouTube for the rest of your life. You probably want to do content creation. Eventually you start building that, right?
The
so
skills.
So I think this is something that will spur the economy.
Skilling up.
Skilling up. But you also want to do it in a secure environment.
Yes.
So I think this is what we need to create. Then this is what we are creating.
Right.
Today, which is why we're one of the 4 CSPs.
Right. Now we will take another short breather. When we come back, we will close the session with talking about the actual commitments that is in place for us to realize this vision.
Sure.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back after these messages.
Thanks, Elaine.
Yati is a housewife in Kuala Lumpur. Having lived here for a long time, she misses her mother's nasi kuning. Can Yati use the latest smartphone and fast internet access to call her mother, who is in a remote area in Sabah? Introducing Jendela, a government initiative to improve Malaysia's communications infrastructure and broadband coverage. This move will reduce the digital divide and enable cities, suburbs, and rural areas to receive better quality broadband services. Jendela will be rolled out in phases. The 3G network will be gradually terminated as the 4G network is expanded to give Malaysians access to high-speed mobile lines throughout the country. Additionally, all fiber service providers will continue to lend their support by upgrading their network capacity and deploying more base stations to meet the increase in 4G and 5G traffic. This will pave the way for future technology adoptions such as wireless and fixed wireless access, VoLTE, and 5G to achieve the country's digital agenda. Thanks to improved infrastructure through Jendela and by upgrading to a 4G smartphone, Yati is able to speak to her mother without any interruption. This digital transformation will raise the people's economic status and advance the country's socio-economic progress.
Thanks for staying with us on The Nation Jendela. You're still with me, Elaine Abdullah. I'm speaking to Tengku Muneer, Tengku Muzani, Chief Strategy Officer, Telekom Malaysia. We're speaking about commitment to enable a digital Malaysia. The Jalinan Digital Negara, or Jendela, has been on track to create that digital nation that we have a vision of. And it's not a pipe dream, it's a necessity now in order for us to be able to continue our livelihoods. The COVID-19 pandemic forced us, not just us, the entire world as a human species, to embrace that we need to adapt, we need to change, we need to create a new way of living, because otherwise, what are the alternatives? We didn't really have much alternatives. So let's talk about how we were forced to work from home very quickly, everybody had 2 days to pack. Announced on 18th of March last year, 2020. You're at home trying to figure out how to run your business. Or you're at home trying to figure out how to learn and go to school and teach. You're at home trying to figure out how I'm going to take care of my parents or my elderly or whoever, people who are a distance from you when you're unable to go take care and meet them. So let's talk about how this commitment, how are we creating this new brave new world, embracing this brave new, and how is TM assisting and facilitating this process?
Sure. Okay, for a start, I think it's a very difficult question. To be honest, there's one thing that we need to think of. It's sometimes it sounds fluffy, but it's a very serious matter. That in the current environment, you can't forget about innovation. Innovation is in some cases it can be a taboo word because everybody talks about innovation, but it's nothing innovative about it. But let's take a step back, right? Let's take a step back and see and look at some of the ride-hailing companies, right? So ride-hailing companies operate on the basic premise of connecting customers and providing customer experience, right? Companies, even TM, for that matter, we have started to move beyond the providing connectivity solutions. What we have done is that we have looked at two things. One is, what do the customers want? How do you address the customer's needs? And the second one is experience. Connectivity without good experience, it's pre-Jendela anyway, right? So, and with that, you spur innovation. How do you do that, right? If I were to look at it and on the TM's viewpoint, we look at co-creation of platforms. We do work with some of the government agencies, people like MDEC, even KKMM, in providing the necessary platform for people who want to start that business, especially in the initial phase of this COVID. We have had one or two, or in now a lot more than that, success cases of people who used to work on a brick and mortar business and eventually they move up to the digital space. And they're doing very, very well. Now,
case in point, I wanted to quickly highlight this. We have about 3 minutes left.
Sure.
Where one of the sort of core problems that happened during the COVID-19 pandemic was you had a need for medical services, but then you couldn't go to the hospitals anymore because it was COVID central. So now, this is where that need for a sort of like a remote service is going to be really, really highly required.
I've seen a few applications coming up, even prior to COVID-19. I think all the more is going to be a lot more important. But don't just hold on to just medical. It can even be education services.
For sure.
Free tuitions and so forth. So I think this is where, when I mentioned about innovation, typically a telco will only innovate to a certain point, technologically, but we will want the SMEs, or in this case, the corporate, or even the average person on the street to start innovating. Again, coming back to the story of ride-hailing, they addressed a situation where the customers are not happy with the right services they're getting, right?
Yes, correct.
So it's the same thing as how we move forward in this new normal.
Yes. We definitely have to sort of like, it's not have to, it's a need that we, I think as a collective society, we're required to address. Now, in closing, we have about a minute left. Perhaps you can share with us what your vision is, coming from a point of view of having a future optics for the future in terms of Jendela and a digital nation.
I think in short, the most important thing is addressing the connectivity needs. That is one. That's Jendela. What TM wants to provide is the next layer, which is addressing the needs of the customers. It can be the customers, can be corporates, can be the average person on the street. But we are also looking in co-creation of new things. TM is very open to that, because the topic of innovation is going to be very critical in the next couple of years, especially when you already have the connectivity addressed by Jendela. So what next, right? That's the big question. So I think this is what we are looking at right now. So in short, we are not just a single operator. We are also looking into addressing the needs of the people. But we also want to look at the angle of innovation, but it has to come from the outside in.
Thank you so much, Tengku Muneer, for sharing your thoughts with us. Of course, we are heartened to hear that the industry has come together to build that future for entire Malaysia. We were, of course, speaking to Tengku Muneer, Tengku Muzani, Chief Strategy Officer, Telekom Malaysia, on commitment to enable a digital Malaysia. Now, Jalinan Digital Negara or Jendela plan is on track to accelerate Malaysia into the future. With relevant stakeholders cementing their commitment to making this a reality, we are surely on the right path to being competitive in the new digital world. Thank you for joining us here on Bernama TV. In the Nation Jendela, I'm Muneer. Bye for now.